Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the session for this evening around networking and how to actually promote your brand. And I can see on the screen that I also have Bonnie Phillips, who, as you know, is the chair of the chapter. But if I could just start, my name's Jenny Lighthowlers. I'm the Dean of the Deakin Law School, and it's a great pleasure, as always, to engage with our alumni and our students. And this is a really important part of actually being a lawyer and being able to promote your brand and get yourself out there. So let me start. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Wathaurong and the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathered today. We pay our respects to the local people for allowing us to have our gathering on their land, and to their elders past, present and future. It's very interesting to have a series on networking, and I think it's something that lawyers who get very busy on a day-to-day basis, engrossed in whatever matters they've got in front of them, or sort of being responsive to other people, we really need to actually work on how to actually promote your own profile and actually let people know what you do and how well you do it. The networking piece is really important. So I actually say to students, be really careful. So the negatives first, be careful about Twitter, be careful about Facebook, be careful what you say on other social media things, because when you apply for a job, people can look you up. And unless everything's on a private platform, there's your 21st birthday party might be all over the office where you're looking for a job, and that may or may not be a good thing. LinkedIn, of course, is an incredibly important professional network system, and I note with great pleasure how many of our students and alumni really maintain a very solid LinkedIn profile. When they meet people, they send out invites to try and do the networking. And of course, we've kind of been stuck with LinkedIn and online media networking for at least the last 2 years, although now we're actually in a position where we can go out and about. So networking and branding through your friends, through your social contacts. But when I was thinking about it, I think one of the most important referrals is actually your clients. And if your clients say nice things about you to other people, that's a fabulous source of work and a reliable source of work. So network with your clients as well. Network and go to events, go to seminars, write papers, do blogs, keep your name up in the profile. It's good for you and it's good for wherever you're working as well. So last comment before I hand over to Bonnie, don't make enemies. You might think the legal profession is big, and you might think you graduate or you work with vast numbers of lawyers. But basically, most of you will be working in Melbourne, and you'll come across the same people over and over again because you'll be working in similar area over and over again. So be respectful of your colleagues because it will pay back in the end. Clients are the best referees. Don't make enemies of your colleagues. Work hard at actually promoting yourself. Now, I'm going to hand over in a minute to Bonnie. Bonnie is president of the Deakin Law School Alumni chapter, and I'm incredibly grateful to Bonnie for all of the things that she does to promote both the chapter and, incidentally, the law school itself. Bonnie is the principal lawyer and head of family and relationship law at Coulter Legal. I could imagine that would be quite a challenging task, Bonnie, a very big job. So welcome and thank you. And I apologise that I'm not going to stay around because I'm actually off networking to a gala dinner at the Melbourne Town Hall. So it's been a fabulous opportunity to actually welcome everybody, and I'm sorry I can't participate more in the session. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you so much, Jenny. We appreciate it, and we'll let you get off to your networking. Thank you. So thank you everyone for coming to this event tonight. I will get our panellists to now turn on their cameras as well. Tonight's event, as Jenny has said, is focused on personal branding and what is your personal brand, networking and marketing. So as Jenny has said, and I echo her sentiments, as lawyers, we are very good at doing our day-to-day job, and obviously as professionals as well, but also having that focus on our network and marketing, building our referrers, having a good personal reputation and so on is very, very important. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight. I'll introduce our panellists in a moment, but as you will see, we do have a Q&A box in tonight's discussion. So we would like it to be interactive. So if you've got any questions you'd like to put to our panelists, you're welcome to enter those into the Q&A box. And then as we get towards the end of the session tonight, we'll do our best to answer those. And feel free to either address them to one of the panelists or to just our panel in general. So we have some wonderful people joining us tonight, and thank you all for giving your time tonight to come and speak with us. We've got Anna Lazinski, Seth Ryan, and Joe Evans. I'll start by introducing Anna. Anna is an award-winning executive, general counsel, author, and advisor, having studied law in various locations around the world, including Melbourne. Starting out at a major Australian law firm, Anna has spent the majority of her legal career in-house, working in the banking, automotive, and cosmetic industries. She is passionate about innovation, transformation, and mindset. In 2021, Anna launched her own consulting business, working with legal tech and corporate teams across the globe to help them digitally transform. Amongst other awards, Anna has been recognised as one of APAC's top 10 innovative lawyers by the Financial Times, as well as an in-house leader and Australasian lawyer, and leading innovator in legal services by Global 100. Very impressive. Separately, Anna is a qualified meditation teacher and health coach, as well as the co-founder of The Mindful Lawyers. She's an advisory board member to Miss Tyler. She Breaks the Law, being a global female innovator network, and she sits on Clock Australia chapter. So welcome, Anna. Lovely to have you. We then have Seth Ryan. So Seth graduated from Deakin University in 2015 with a Bachelor of Law with Honours and Bachelor of Commerce degrees. Seth is a commercial leader and strategic account management professional with a deep experience in fast-moving consumer goods. Currently a national account manager at the Kraft Heinz, Seth breaks down complex problems into practical commercial solutions to achieve sustainable business growth. With previous experience managing customer strategy across health, beauty, and pantry retail categories, Seth utilises a collaborative and analytical approach to build stronger retail relationships. As a side, he is a keen runner and part-time musician, and he's currently training for the Gold Coast Marathon one step at a time. So good luck, Seth. That's very impressive. And finally, we have Joe Evans. Joe is an experienced public and online speaking and presentation skills coach. She's a presenter, TEDx speaker coach, distinguished Toastmaster, and life coach. Joe has worked for many years as a trainer and teacher, both with individuals and small groups, to help them develop greater confidence and a wide range of public speaking and presenting skills so that they can present and speak in a professional, engaging, and inspiring way. Her approach is to create a fun, safe, and supportive environment, allowing participants to fully enjoy the learning experience. So welcome, Joe, as well. So kicking off into our discussion this evening, I guess for you, Anna, to start with, what is our personal brand? Can you explain to us what that is and why it is so important, particularly for lawyers, to be building up their personal brand?
Thanks, Bonnie. Love defining terms, good old lawyers. We love defining terms. Hi, everyone. I hope you're smiling and that you're well. So I'm actually going to draw on a Harvard Business Review article to define personal brand, and then I'm going to put my own spin on it. So your personal brand is more intentional than your reputation. It is how you want people to see you, whereas reputation is about credibility. Your personal brand is about visibility and the values that you outwardly represent. You have the power to define your brand by aligning your intentions with actions. That is, changing your decisions and behaviors to influence how others see you and to help them connect both emotionally and intellectually to the image you hope to portray. If that image aligns with the opportunities that you want, then you are most likely to secure them. So why is it important? And I've actually done a podcast on this with Lawyers Weekly, I think last year. We live in an era where it's really important to be visible. In terms of creating opportunities for yourself, in terms of connecting with others, both colleagues, peers, that next career opportunity, that next client. It's about sharing as well. So sharing the fears, the failures, the successes. And for me, being on social media is less about what you do, but actually who you are. Because my prediction is that we are moving into an era where lawyering is just an identity, but actually what we want to get to know and how you become a really good lawyer is your relationships, how you relate to people, how you connect with people. And so by living your legal life out loud, and let's face it, as lawyers, there's not that much we can share because of confidentiality, but we're all humans first, actually, lawyers second. And so I think it's really important to connect on that level and show people who you are. So that's why I think it's really important. I also think it's going to make or break certain practices, so certain law firms and certainly certain careers, maybe not today, but very soon into the future. So if you're already on it, congratulations for being an early adopter. If you're still thinking about it, switch that kind of legal mindset off of overthinking and get on there and at least start observing. And if you've totally dismissed it, then I invite you to think again, and hopefully this session inspires you to do so. Thanks, Bonnie.
Thanks, Anna. And I guess when you're building a personal brand or thinking about what that is, and particularly for you having worked both, within a firm, in-house, and now working with your own business as well, has the way you've adopted your personal brand shifted at all or transitioned over that time?
Absolutely. So I joined LinkedIn, for example, in 2007. So I've been on it a very long time. So I was a junior lawyer at a law firm. My rationale for getting on LinkedIn at that point was essentially for it to act like my digital Rolodex. So if you don't know what a Rolodex is, because you weren't around then, basically it was like an alphabetical paper little flip thing, right? Where you'd put all your business cards in after collecting them from networking. And so I used to have this like limiting rule that I would only connect with people on LinkedIn that I had met in person. So I'd been to a networking event. If I'd meet a new client, I'd connect with them on LinkedIn. And then over the years, as I moved in-house and as the platform evolved and I became a premium member, I have really become really open to it. So I've now got a community of almost 16,000 people on LinkedIn, and that's growing day by day. And so, and I'm really consistent with my posting. I'm really clear on that. Some things flop, some things succeed. I don't care. It's about consistency and connecting on the daily. It is part of my routine as a lawyer. It's part of the gig. I know that may sound confronting to hear, but that is the reality in 2022. If you're not having a presence on social media, then I query, like technology, and I'm a big fan of spruiking technology for lawyers, then are you actually fulfilling your duty by showing up in this way? It is fabulous for recruitment, both when you're looking and when you're trying to build a team. So that's why I saw the real power of it. The thing to note is, and we can talk about this, the nuances are every company is going to have a different social media policy. So that will also change how you manage, how you show up online. And obviously, the point is to really know that off by heart so that you are staying clear of all the things that are likely to get you fired or that lead to disciplinary action. You are going to make other people feel uncomfortable by being on social media. That is fact, because often if you're doing something that no one else is doing, then you become a mirror for that and you shine a light on it. But know that it is a skill of the future. It's a skill of today. And hopefully over time, people will be inspired by what you're doing instead of thinking that, you mustn't be busy, you mustn't be doing your role properly because why do you have time to be on social media? And that gets asked often. A colleague of mine from the States posted overnight the fact that he was able to solve a legal problem as a general counsel because of his presence on LinkedIn, because he could reach out to the counterparty on LinkedIn and basically help his business cut to the chase and work through the problem, because no one else had connections with the counterparty, yet he did. So you are going to be using it for different purposes, but ultimately, when it comes to your personal brand, if you're doing that well and respectfully and professionally, but also authentically, then your employer should get a halo effect from that, and that's really real. But they should also respect what you're doing, and hopefully over time you can also, if it's foreign to everyone else, you can use it as a way to educate your colleagues and your bosses about why this is making your eyes sparkle and why it's really important to you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anna. And it is just so important now. And I think it's something we can no longer really just avoid. You know, we all have to try and get on board with this and find how it fits, I think, with that authentic way that you want to brand yourself and market and network. And we'll certainly come back to you, Anna, shortly for some tips and traps, I think, around social media and how we can do that well and how you can really, promote your image across those platforms. So I might turn to you now, Seth. Obviously, it's very competitive out there, you know, particularly with the industry you're in, you're often, trying to source, new clients, new referrers. How can we make ourselves stand out? When we are marketing, what can we do to successfully, build up more referrer networks in a really competitive market?
Yeah, well, thanks, Bonnie. And first of all, good evening to everyone. And hopefully you take some really valuable information out of tonight's session. I think, Bonnie, this is a really interesting and I think valuable question for everyone at all aspects of their career, being just starting out mid-career or at the senior stage of your career. I think standing out and being able to influence others is really critical, and it can be influenced by adopting a few different, tactics or things at both a personal and a professional level. I think for me though, and looking at this from a professional standpoint, to really stand out and set yourself up, stand out from others, I think it's really key to understand your audience first and foremost when you're networking and building a personal brand. Who is the referrer? Who is the organization? And who is the prospective employer? What are their micro and macro factors affecting their business at a particular point in time? I think by understanding this framework, you really build, a knowledge bank to really build meaningful connection and conversation. I think once you understand your audience, then it becomes about understanding yourself. And I think it's something Anna touched on previously, which is it's understanding our own unique qualities, or as I would say in my industry, what is your unique value proposition? What is it that is your special talent and gift that sets you apart from others? Are you a commercial person? Are you analytical? Do you have experience in leading teams or building relationships? I think once you understand that, you can then really leverage it to, really critically add value to a given organization or a referrer. I think what we all struggle with, thinking the word marketing ourselves to others, is we see this as an active sell to someone, when I think often a lot of the times it doesn't have to be, but it's really understanding what we know about ourselves and our others and our unique skill set and mindset to help solve problems or elevate a business or the problem that a referrer is facing. I think though, everything I've discussed on previously is really underpinned by, and I think Anna said it just in a different way, which is really having a genuine interest in the people that we're building a network with. Ultimately, people are people, and we want to connect with others. And being relatable, having shared interests, and being able to build that meaningful connection is what will set you apart from others. And something I've learned in my career is that if you want to build a transactional relationship, have transactional conversations. But if you want to build meaningful relationships, really focus on meaningful conversations. So if you can do all of those, both personally and professionally, you can really set yourself apart from others within your industry.
And having those meaningful conversations, what advice would you give to people to to have a meaningful conversation and not just fall back into that selling a service or just being quite technical or transactional in those conversations?
Yeah, I think building meaningful relationships, I think, again, it's not just related to, I guess, a client or a referrer, but it can be, interchangeable to anything, or any relationship at a given moment in time in our lives. I think the traits that all people have who are great at building meaningful relationships can be summarized to a few things. I think, as I touched on before, Bonnie, it's about understanding your audience. Who are they and what makes them tick? I think secondary to that, though, and the art of really great networking it's being a great listener, and it's understanding who it is that you're truly listening to, being patient, asking the right questions, and really taking that information in. And when you have that information, it's about being curious and practicing in being truly interested and wanting to learn about others. What are their shared experiences? What are their feelings? And what are their, again, unique, thoughts that, drive them as people? I think finally, to all those things as well, and it's something that I've become really interested in as my career has unfolded, is acting with authenticity and acting with empathy. And really, I think empathy is a big one, and the ability to step into other people's shoes and truly understand where they're coming from. And it's this that really, I guess, influences your emotional intelligence. And in my opinion, it's really understanding this empathy, which enables you to really understand how others want to be treated. And by doing this, you can really untap into something, which is, understanding who they are as people, what makes them tick, and how we together can build, I guess, those meaningful, mutually beneficial relationships.
That's such a great point, Seth. And Anna touched upon that as well, this word of empathy. And I think it's so critical in our industry. Certainly for myself in family law, it's very difficult to bring on a family law client, for example, if you don't have that empathetic side. But I think similarly with any client or referrer we're dealing with, it's so important to be able to build that connection. And so I think something that sometimes happens is we go out and we do this marketing, we may start to build a referral relationship, but then we leave the event or we finish that conversation and it falls away. What tips would you have for continuing to foster that relationship, and how can we make sure it's actually an ongoing relationship into the future?
I think, again, continuing on to the future, I think what's really key is I think it's ultimately just comes down to effort, Bonnie. I think it's really continuing to, we're all busy people. I think it's ultimately continuing to ensure that we have a continuing checking in and building upon those networks and personal relationships. Routinely, as Anna said, reaching out on the various, I guess, social media platforms and ensuring that we're continuing ensuring that we're adding value to the networks or relationships that we build in a way that really ensures that, again, there's that strong connection there for both sides.
Thanks, Seth. And look, sometimes we might have a referrer or we might have a mutual referral relationship where we're sending work both ways. Sometimes things can go a little pear-shaped. You might have a client who might be unhappy for some reason, or the relationship may become damaged. What can you then do to rebuild that? And how would you suggest that we go about, if there is a client complaint or a difficulty that arises along the way?
I think it's a really interesting question, Bonnie. And again, it's not just related to a client or a referrer here, but in my opinion, it goes to the heart of how we communicate. And I think really understanding what it is, that problem or objection that we're facing at a given point in time. For me, I like to approach any objection or rebuilding a client relationship in sort of a few steps or in a bit of a framework. As I touched on before, I think what is really critical here and what I've learned in my career is it's really important to understand what is a true objection and what's not. I think a client or a referrer may often have, 3 or 4 different things that they're challenging on us at a certain point in time, and really keying in and understanding what it is the 1 or 2 things that are the greatest challenge are really critical here. I think once you have that information, then again, it's really important to understand what are the reasons behind those objections or challenges in a given point in time, and asking them to elaborate further. I think once you have this information, really aligning with your client on the specifics of their reasoning or rationale is really critical here. I like to ask questions just to really reinstate what they're saying, something to the effect of, so you've told me this, is that correct? Or you've told me A, B, C, D. Do you think we should approach it by doing Y? And I think once you have this information, then Bonnie, then it goes back to, I guess, us as industry professionals and using our own knowledge and talents here to really solve for the problem, and being critical and skillful in converting how we solve those problems into, I guess, benefits for our clients or referrers. But as I said, ultimately, everything I've sort of touched on is really underpinned by acting with empathy and authenticity, because I do think people want to work with and will continue to work with people they trust, be it on social media, be it in person, be it someone they have an existing relationship with.
Thanks, Seth. I think that's so important, to demonstrate people are being heard, to repeat back to them your understanding of what they've said, and a pathway forward, I think, is always really useful to solving those issues and rebuilding a relationship. So, Jo, I might now turn to you. You've got such a wealth of experience in public speaking and, being confident in those ways. From your point of view, when we are networking, it may be that we're speaking at an event or presenting to people. What are some tips you have to be able to stand out in those environments?
Good evening, everybody. Well, I think the first thing is to do something perhaps a little unexpected. So I am not a lawyer, but what I am is someone who loves to ask people, what do they wish to gain from my training? So you weren't expecting me to have a magic wand there. So I think that whatever is relevant to you, and it is a little bit different, is fun. Let me just give you another example. I often go to networking events and you have everybody doing their 1 minute pitch, their 2 minute pitches. And so often they will start with the equivalent of good evening or good morning. I'm Jo Evans and I'm a public speaking and presentation coach, blah, blah, blah. I would never start like that. I think when Bonnie first met me, I said something like, for many people, public speaking is an act of courage. Maybe that's true for you. And that was how I then led into my pitch. I think I was the only one that morning who didn't start with, hello, I am. So I think as the simplest way, being memorable is by doing something a little unexpected, a little different. And not to just kind of get attention for yourself, but just to kind of let people know that you're doing something different. I think sorry, Bonnie.
I was just going to say, Jo, great. I love that you brought that little one down. I certainly wasn't expecting it, and it will be memorable. But do you think part of doing something that's a bit different is finding your brand as well and knowing?
Yes, I do. So for me, I do a lot of work with corporates, but also with not-for-profits, with children. So I am saying to people that doing public speaking with me will be fun and light-hearted. There will be a little bit of magic in it. So me bringing my wand in is instantly showing that I'm a little bit different, a little bit wacky, and that I think that's saying I'm approachable. I'm curious what you all thought when you saw me wave my wand around. I'm guessing you would have had some opinion come from that. And I hope that was a positive thing that linked to my brand. Yeah. I guess the other two things, perhaps we've already said a lot this morning, which is so important about being memorable, is not talking about kind of yourself as in this is what I do, but this is the impact I have on others. So linking with stories of clients you work with, maybe giving them the voice of what they've said in terms of working with you, the impact of it. That's a much easier way to say nice things about yourself rather than, well, I'm really, really good at what I do. That can sound, sometimes people will not do that, but it's lovely to say, oh, a client said in working with me, that really supported me to do something. So collect those testimonials from your clients and feel comfortable to use them. And I love that. People are people. I mean, we're all talking about that those meaningful conversations, those asking, the other person, getting to know them.
Thanks, Jo. And sometimes I think when we are networking, marketing, talking about what we do, we can struggle to get our message across and really explain clearly what it is that we can offer and how we can assist a client or work with a referrer. What strategies would you have for us to really speak clearly so people can understand what it is we do?
Yes, absolutely. For those situations where you can prepare, can I suggest all of you prepare and practice again, saying it out loud? Because I think if I sort of sum it up perhaps in the terms of, in my head, I have a few little mini pitches about what I do, maybe a 1-minute pitch, a 2-minute pitch, a 3-minute pitch, and I have honed what I say. I have practiced it with other people. I have checked with other people that it is congruent with who I am and what my brand is. But it's not just being congruent with who I am and my brand. It's actually being able to deliver that in a gorgeous way. So if we have planned and practiced what we want to say, practiced it out loud several times and heard it come out of our mouths, then in any of those networking situations, when people ask us, we can speak in a really relaxed way, because our attention is not going on what are we saying, it's going on how we say it and how we're interacting with the person we're talking to. So I think it's taking that time to really prepare before, think about who you are, asking people, exploring that whole idea.
I think that almost goes back to what you said as well, Seth, about knowing your audience, and doing that research and background work. We can't really expect just to walk into a room of people and, be able to present well if we haven't done the work. So I think that's great advice from both of you there. And Jo, look, a lot of us as lawyers in particular, this doesn't come naturally to a lot of people, and it can be very daunting. It can be very scary, and people can walk into these situations lacking a lot of confidence. So how can we at least look confident, or at least feel comfortable going out to these events? And what sort of strategies would you say to people to help boost a bit of confidence in them? I think you're on mute there, Jo.
I am on mute. Can I suggest, before I say anything, that you all remind yourself of something like the statistic I'm going to give you. 76% of people say they fear public speaking, and probably everyone else is lying. I think as a public speaking coach, I sometimes feel like I'm a doctor. Do you know what I mean? I go to parties, and when people say, "What do you do?" I kind of hear all those stories of how fearful people are. Now, not everyone is fearful, but at some level, most people are. And I think, it's like, feel the fear and do it anyway. There is an anxiety around that. So I suppose the baseline is, it's okay to feel a little bit fearful, and use that fear to help you be super prepared. Yeah. And then give yourself a bit of a chance, that beautiful mindset to say, hey, I'm really good at what I do. I really want to share with people what I do. I am worthy to share what I do, whatever it is, the feeling, your feeling of not being good enough, whatever. And then go out there. Yeah. And remember that people do want to know what you do. Yeah. So I feel that's the first one, is that kind of sort of beautiful mindset about what we do. I've got 3 other ideas, and I'm going to leave my favorite one to the last.
Go for it. Okay,
smiling and breathing. Yeah, if you want to look confident, you need to smile. Yeah, so we can often be concentrating so much on what we're saying that we forget to smile, and a smile can make you look confident and feel confident, and then the person is kind of interacting with you. That will really help. And remember to breathe. Just take a moment to breathe. That's another great way to help you to just relax and calm yourself down. I'm going to say again, because I feel this so strongly, always be prepared and practiced. In my line of work, I so often hear about people who've had bad situations where they tried to wing it And they'll say, oh, I'm the kind of person that doesn't like practicing. I just like to wing it. That sounds more natural. I think those people are sometimes perhaps being a little lazy. And I think the people who can wing it are the people who practice it so well they can look like they're winging it. My favorite way to look confident, outwardly, whatever, is the power of the pause. I just did it there. You'd have noticed it.
That works quite well. Yes.
Yes. I've done a half an hour podcast about the power of the pause. I love it and think it's just the easiest, simplest way to bring up your level of speaking, to help you look confident and to help your audience, clients, colleagues to understand what you're talking about. Let me just quickly give 4 examples I thought of. When you pause, it gives you time to breathe just before you speak, which also gives you time to think, which gives you the chance to look confident. It gives you that time to perhaps clarify something in your brain and think about what you're going to say next. It gives the person you're talking to time to kind of take on board what you're saying. And I think it also gives you just time to also look and see how they're reacting. Sometimes we're talking, we're saying too much, we're not really interacting with them. So it gives you time to just stop and notice someone else. Those would be some of my thoughts.
They are great tips. I really appreciate those, Jo. They're fantastic. I'm going to actually ask Anna and Seth as well. I mean, you're both people who do public speaking, as am I sometimes, and I still get nervous. For both of you, and I might start with you, Anna, do you have any extra tips that you would share if we are going out and networking, marketing, public speaking that can help us be more confident?
I think Jo mentioned practice. So like with anything, the more you do it, the more it becomes second nature, and you can move from faking it to it actually feeling like it's part of the way that you roll. I think if I think of networking in this way. If you're going to, now that we can all kind of reconnect in person, start with even a family barbecue. And I know that sounds crazy, but try and spend time with every single person that is at that barbecue and kind of practice. Because if a family member who isn't a lawyer, who hasn't studied law, who may actually not know what your latest passion is, or what you're working on, or where you're traveling to next, you can use them as a bit of a practice. And therefore, whilst it may, these kind of big networking business opportunities might only come up from time to time, you can subsidize that practice with friends and family. So I think use your kind of inner circle, your what I call your personal kind of board of directors, to support you. And, I've had nights at home where I've sat around the table with 2 of my best girlfriends and said, right, let's nail this. Like you can, again, it can be fun, people that you trust and feel safe with, but, you can really kind of give it a whirl and get some really honest and constructive and kind of, great feedback coming from a place of good intent. So practice, just to highlight Jo's point, I think is crucial, and you can actually get more practice than you think. Hot tip from tonight, connect with everybody in this, however many participants are, if you can see their names, try and connect with everyone on social media, and then find 5 people you don't know and practice on Zoom together. You've all shared in this session today. So, you've all gone through it. And so use each other and create that practice network, a network to practice networking. I'm sure it's not the first time someone's done that. And then otherwise, I think, courage is a really big one, and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone is another. So if you're feeling like, I can't be bothered going, it's raining, it's cold, I would rather watch I don't know, Real Housewives on Netflix, which is my vice, then, you know, but kind of try and, you know, a bit like exercise, you know, imagine to yourself, I'm going to feel so good on the other side. And so if you can just kind of push through that discomfort and, you know, and kind of the unfamiliar kind of feeling, then again, practice. And when you're practicing, it doesn't mean that you need to like work the room. You know, that is an art that takes years of events and being in forums with particular levels of people to be able to, you know, because there's an art to it. There's an art to coming up to someone, to speaking with them, but also exiting. And I think, you know, there's a whole separate session on how you excuse yourself graciously and gracefully, because even some of the most senior and eloquent speakers that I've met are really bad at that. You know, they haven't practiced that bit, or they haven't kind of gotten some counsel on how to do that effectively. So go in with an open mindset, with a, you know what, I'm just starting out, I'm learning, and don't expect to be perfect the first time round, because networking isn't natural. Connection's natural, but networking is not. So I think it's the best thing ever. It has absolutely made my career. And I didn't come from a family. I didn't come from a connected family. I'm the first lawyer in my family. I'm an immigrant. I come, you know, we're first generation immigrants. My parents were not connected to the, you know, to the best of the best and members at Australia Club and all these fancy kind of things. I literally had to start myself, knowing that it's sometimes not what you know, but who you know. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. Fabulous tips as well. Seth, anything you would like to add on that point?
No, Anna's a tough act to follow, and I echo a lot of what she said here. I think, and everything that I think Joe said as well. I think practice is key, and I think, though, ultimately for me, I think just I echo a bit of what Anna said here, which is that for me, ultimately, I think my confidence in public speaking came to a bit of an epiphany I had a number of years ago, that one of the most critical things for me is just to be myself and be my true self and really own that and remember why that's powerful and why that's unique to me. It's understanding that everyone is different and everyone has their own unique way of operating or doing things, and that's okay. I think, and as Anna said as well, these things, building confidence, feeling comfortable in our own skin in networking, they take time, and it's a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. So I think we all need to be patient and we need to be kind to ourselves. And yeah, as I said, it's understanding that if nothing changes, nothing changes, but remembering that, you know, there's no failure here. It's all a learning process. So yeah, I've taken Anna's words and made them sound not as interesting, but yeah, I hope you don't mind, Anna.
I think it was very interesting, Seth.
Thanks,
It was very interesting.
And I'll just remind our audience, please do put any questions as we're going along in our Q&A box. There's one sitting in there at the moment, and we'll try and get to those towards the end. We've got about 15 minutes or so left tonight if you do want to add those questions. All right, so look, I might actually come back to you, Anna, again, because earlier in tonight's session, we talked about social media. And I've got some more questions around that point. And one of our Q&A questions has sort of come up about this too, is I guess it's a fine line between our personal life on social media and also our professional life on social media. What are some tips and traps that you would share when we're trying to balance both of those aspects, our personal and professional life on social media, and making sure that what we're doing isn't conflicting in any way?
Really great question, and such a common conundrum. And this actually stops a lot of people in their tracks from getting started. I think the thing about social media is, yes, it does leave a digital tattoo, you know, to Jenny's opening, but come at that not from a place of fear, but from a place of empowerment. Now, don't forget, you've got to always, you know, and this is the brilliant thing about the training that you're getting at law school, is that you can ask yourself a whole lot of questions and almost play the scenario out. So for instance, if you decide for whatever reason that you want to talk about sexual harassment, then get some counsel, draft the post first, and share it with people that you trust immensely and who have got your back, and who will catch you when you fall to sense check it. Because the challenge about sharing something really personal is that we can get really emotional and attached to the content, and that's when it's tricky. So that's kind of point number one. If you're going to go personal, sense check it. There is absolutely a way that you can be authentic. Now, authenticity, let's get clear as well, because I think we talk about authenticity. If you look at the full definition of authenticity, it says that you are who you are, no filters. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are very few people that I can be that with in terms of capital A authenticity. Because if you think about who you are behind closed doors, right, in terms of this, you know, I dance when I like win a client or something cool happens, you know, I break out in a silly dance. You know, you kind of have to be careful about who you share that with, right? So also what's really important before you embark on the journey, and the best advice I got from an executive coach was know what your non-negotiables are. That is, know what your no-go zones are for any social media. So for instance, on LinkedIn, you will get a very thought leadership kind of thought-provoking slant from me. Whereas on Instagram, I'll show you what I'm eating through the day in order to feed my mindset and to make sure that I'm nourishing and actually feeding my optimal performance. So you will get behind the scenes. You'll get me in, you know, a tracksuit jumper because I'm just working it from home, you know, on a strategy paper. Whereas on LinkedIn, you know, I probably won't share that as often. So you've also got to work out, to Seth's point, who your audience is. And I think your progression of how personal you get, I'm senior now, right? So, and I'm also working for myself. So I've got full freedom in terms of what I want to share, because literally the buck and the reputation and the image stops with me. Different when you're working for a company, different if you're working for a conservative like law firm, and also different if you're junior, because you've just got to be a little bit more mindful and also build trust over time, right? So you wouldn't, just as you wouldn't walk into a networking event and say, I've got period cramps, you know, it's really hurting me right now, or I'm having hormonal issues. How are you? What do you do? You know, it's the same thing online. Just think about that, how you kind of manage these conversations face to face with a stranger, or with someone that you've only met a handful of times, or a colleague that you're not that close with. Show up in the same way on social media. I think they're probably the kind of top tips around that.
Great advice, Anna. And one of the questions that's come through in our Q&A box is, would you recommend, and this can be for any of our panelists as well, but it might start with you, Anna, would you recommend having separate personal and professional social media accounts? Like perhaps on Instagram, you might have your professional page and your personal page.
Can I kind of talk about personal and professional just quickly before I answer that?
Of course.
I think we're living in an era of work-life integration. So yes, keep things separate to an extent, but I think if you really want to establish a following and create your own community, then just have a think about that. Now on LinkedIn, obviously you can't have you can have a personal and a business profile if you've got your own company, or if you're posting on behalf of the law firm that you work for or the company that you work for. On Instagram, I do have, because it's visual, I do have my Legally Innovative account, which is my business account, and I've registered that as a business account because it also unlocks different features, which is important to me because I love the analytics. And I do have a personal account where I kind of share more about, you know, my family or my husband or my friends, because I'm conscious that, you know, I don't want to have to seek their consent every time if I'm posting. And I'm conscious of that. You know, not everyone's comfortable. So my answer is on LinkedIn, where you can't separate, then be okay with that. But obviously on Instagram, you can separate. On Twitter, you can separate. But then it's a lot to manage and it's a lot to be consistent on, particularly on the professional side.
Thanks, Anna. And Seth, did you have something you wanted to add there as well?
Yeah, I think I echo Anna's sentiments here, but I think for me, Bonnie, it's starting with the end in mind, right? And it's understanding where it is that we're trying to get to. Are you trying to build a personal brand or, to Anna's point, a community on one of these social media platforms of who it is that is you as a person, or is it you as some other alter ego or as a business? I think for me, and I think it's something, I think this space has really progressed really quickly in the last 5 years. And I think Anna and Joe both touched on this, but I think being authentic and being consistent and being true to who you are, whilst not crossing, any grounds in terms of who we are and who we work for as an organization. As long as we don't do that, I think the world we live in today is very encouraging of people who have strong personal brands. And so I think that's becoming less and less as a taboo as it might have been 5 to 10 years ago.
Thanks, Seth. Joe, did you want to add anything further on that point?
Oh, a tiny thing, totally offbeat in comparison. Those two have just covered so many beautiful areas. I'm always surprised when people contact me through LinkedIn and talk about, oh, I loved reading the recommendations about you. I really got a flavor of you from that. So as an aside, I might encourage people to give you recommendations. It's like a beautiful testimonial there on the site, and you can get a beautiful range of people.
Thanks.
That's all I had to add there.
Great addition. And look, I'll leave this question open for anyone who wants to jump in. So we've had another question come through. I know for myself, for example, as a family lawyer, I may not be necessarily targeting commercial clients. We may be looking more for those individual clients. What, strategies or recommendations would you have for broadening your network to those sorts of more individual clients as opposed to commercial clients? Does anyone want to jump in? I'm going to pick someone. Seth, do you have any comments you want to add on that one?
Sorry, Bonnie, I lost you there. What was the question?
Basically, how do we broaden our referral networks if we're looking for more of those individual clients? So, for example, it might be a family law client, or you're a criminal lawyer, perhaps, who doesn't work with commercial clients as such, or big businesses. Would you have tips around building those types of networks and relationships?
Yeah, I think for me, and I think it goes to any industry, it's becoming a person of influence, right? And I think the key to that, there's many different ways that you can do it in 2022. I think in the digital era, a lot of that is done through content generation. And that's a word that we hear a lot, and I know Anna is probably a master of it. But it's really setting up your content in a way, both in person or online, that you're really, broadening the range of topics or the range of subject matter areas that you have expertise on to appeal to a broader audience, to ensure that you're beginning to have that touch point across, multiple audience types. That can really help you, as I was touching on earlier today, set yourself apart from others that are also within those spheres of influence or industry subject matter areas.
Thank you, Seth. So we're getting towards the end of our discussion tonight. So if there's any last minute questions anyone would like to pop into the chat box, please do. But just opening up to our panelists, was there anything further you wanted to add tonight on those issues of personal branding, networking, marketing, any last minute tips or traps that you'd like to share with our audience this evening?
I had one question, and it's for my fellow panelists. And I think a question I get asked from time to time is, reaching out and trying to build connection on a social media platform like LinkedIn or Instagram, or it can be, something else, even TikTok now. It's probably, that's a new platform. But I think my question is, and again, someone like you, Anna, and it's probably similar for you, Joe, who have big, I guess, audiences on these platforms. And I'm sure you get requests for time all the time, and people want to reach out to you and pick your brains on different things. Are there any tips that you can give our audience tonight on the sort of things to say, how to approach that to really get someone's interest and get someone's time on these platforms, and to really help build that network?
I think Anna, with her huge following, and would use LinkedIn more than me. So Anna, share your wisdom there.
My hot tip for law students. So I'm a big fan of paying it forward. So I never say no to a law student that reaches out to me for a half an hour Zoom catch up. So I think it comes back to courage. I think there's this assumption that everyone's reaching out to you and asking for your time. They're selling you a lot, like they're sending you stuff and selling you a lot. But actually, not a lot of people have courage, particularly students, to reach out. I think there's an assumption that, I know with me, people say to me, oh, wow, you actually responded, because they know that I've got, a growing following. And so I think they just assume that I'll never get through the DMs. Whereas, the DMs is also where the magic happens, right? To your wand presence. So actually, don't think, some people will not respond to you because they're just not on it regularly. But you'll know from how often they post, that, okay, if they're on once a week, it might take them a week to come back to you, or two, because they're prioritizing responding to comments, not necessarily to random DMs. So I think absolutely give that a whirl. But when you do it, be specific about what you want to discuss. So the ones that just say, hi, Anna, love your profile. Can I have 30 minutes of your time? I sort of think, well, I don't really have time for a chin wag. I'd love to, but that's what my mates are for, or my sister. So tell me what it is. So I love students who are really clear, like they've bothered to look at my profile, they've bothered to Google me, they've bothered to go on my Instagram to really get a sense of who I am and my style. And then they will ask me a question that is on point. Because if they're going to reach out and ask me about family law, well, I can tell you I'll refer them to Bonnie, because I've never studied family law. I've only actually had to refer colleagues. When you're in-house, you get asked all sorts of curly questions. And what's the statistic, Bonnie? Is it still 1 in 2 that gets divorced, or is it higher now post-pandemic?
About 1 in 3, I think.
Oh, 1 in 3. Okay, so 1 in 3. But, I have no idea about family law. I've sat in the court once during law school just to educate myself because I was curious. And then I was like, it's not for me. So Bonnie, kudos to you. I did not have the stomach for it. So that's the thing, don't write to me asking about family law, because I'm not going to be able to help you. And I may look at that and go, wow, did you even bother to, I'm pretty Googleable. Did you even bother to spend 2 minutes to see whether I can help you? Because then that feels grating. It doesn't feel, it kind of feels like you've just blasted everyone in your network rather than being considered about it. And then also when you jump on that Zoom, have a list of questions ready, because it feels impressive. It feels like you're confident. It feels like you're in control, and you're actually maximizing that person's time, because that, everyone's time's precious. And then you get so much more value out of it, right? So make sure that you're prepared, you've got a list of questions, because I do the same thing as well, by the way. So, if someone reaches out to me, the first thing I'll do is spend 15 minutes, either right before I jump on the Zoom with them or at the time, to kind of get a sense of, oh, what's their professional history? Where are they studying? You know, all those kinds of things. Do we have any mutual connections that I can use that as a way to connect? So it's really powerful. So kind of use the time to prepare and research. And I think don't just reach out for the sake of it. You've got to follow through. I've had students who have reached out to me in the past who have made a time in my diary and they're not rocked up. And then they send me, and then I've had to send them a note saying, are you okay? Because my first kind of thought is, has something happened to them? So, you know, are you okay? Oh, yeah, sorry, I got called to a shift. And it's like, well, did you check your diary? Because I did. And I made the time and space for that. And that's expensive, you know, if I calculate that to making dollars in my own business. So just be wary of that as well, because for me, I did not give that person a second chance. And the only reason I didn't is because, yes, they were apologetic, but then they didn't bother to rebook in. And I could just sense energetically, I was like, this isn't going to go well. I'm going to, you know, same thing's going to happen next week. And then I never heard from them again. And that's the other thing. If you do, you know, we all make mistakes, but if you do something like that in a week, maybe just say, look, I'm really sorry again. I've been reflecting on that. That was really poor on my part. Again, be human about it. But be really respectful. I think that's what's important to Jenny's opening point. Not only is the legal profession in Melbourne small, I can tell you, the globe feels small when you really maximise these platforms. And what you want to do is you want people mentioning your name in rooms that you're not in, all over the world, if that's important to you, because you want to work overseas one day or whatever it is. And so it's really important, you know, when someone says, oh, I've just hired X. And if you know that person stood you up all those years ago, like that's a first impression thing, right? So just be really mindful of that. And really, this is your opportunity to practice being professional about the way that you manage yourself and therefore manage your personal brand too.
Thank you, Anna, and really great question, Seth. Thank you for asking that one. So that does bring us to the close of tonight's event. Thank you so much to Anna, Seth and Joe for your time this evening. It's been so valuable listening to all of your insights and guidance through this topic. I think everyone can really take a lot away from this tonight. And thank you to all of our audience members for coming along and sending through some questions. They've been great to enhance our discussion. And thank you obviously to Deakin and the Alumni Committee for helping to put this event on tonight. I couldn't have done it with your support. You can follow the Deakin Alumni chapter on LinkedIn and obviously follow each other if you wish to do so. So please do stay connected and just make sure your details are up to date with Deakin so you can be informed of future events. We also just want to acknowledge the generosity of our alumni tonight who have indicated an interest in supporting our Deakin students achieving potential scholarships. That support really enables the education for students, and every dollar does really make a really powerful impact. So thank you again, everyone. It's been lovely to have you all here tonight, and I hope you all have a pleasant evening. Thank you.